What's up, founders, investors? Thank you for coming back to another episode of Next Round Ready. I'm your host, Chris. We have special guest Anthony Rose from Seed Legals. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So I know you're one of the startup experts that's kind of in a lot of different areas all over the place. Let's just start with what's your core passion for startups? Where does that come from?
Right, so I guess the joke is, once upon a time I used to be disrupting music. I used to be with Kazaa, the music file sharing. And then I got hired by the BBC to head up BBC iPlayer. And then it was about disrupting television. The things instead of watching on TV, you could watch on your phone anytime you want. And now it's disrupting legals or law. And so Seed Legals is a platform that if you're a startup founder and you're fundraising or getting investment ready, don't spend huge amounts of money with a law firm, get on Seed Legals. So get investment ready, all the legal contracts for fundraising, safes, price round, the legal agreements for your company, all in one place. So we're 160 people, got about 50,000 startups on our platform, which means I talk to literally thousands of founders each year. And then one of the things I love doing is, sharing my experiences to help founders not make the same mistakes and get there faster. So, it's also not my first rodeo, as they say. I've been around and, if only people could get a brain dump on what to do and what not to do to help get them there faster, that would be great. So I spend a lot of time, talking to founders and helping them.
That makes sense because I imagine that the legal side is one area where founders probably either mess up a lot or spend a lot of money. And so what's one of the biggest mistake you see founders make on the legal side of setting up their startup?
A great point. So what I found actually is, Seed Legals is in the UK and the US. And compared to the UK, I see US founders making a lot more mistakes. And I was wondering why, and I've realized the reason I think is because lawyers in the US are extremely expensive. So founders go, I'm not going to use a lawyer, I'm going to download stuff off the internet, and then they make mistakes. So mistake number one is founders incorporate an LLC instead of a Delaware C-Corp, and then they have to go spend money fixing that afterwards. And, one founder's problems is another founder's opportunity. So after I discovered about a third of founders coming our way on Seed Legals have a local state, Florida LLC, then investors like a C corporation, we can explain why in a minute, and they're generally, other than Elon Musk, like a Delaware C corporation. So you then have to spend thousands with lawyers to fix it. So we launched a product to the world's first automated LLC to C Corp. So the second mistake is, I think founders often don't know about QSBS, qualified small business stock. So as qualified small business stock means that as a founder and an investor, if you keep your stock for 5 years, you pay no federal capital gains tax up to the higher of $10 million or next your investment. So it's something to tell investors about, because if you're telling investors about it and others are not, maybe you just made yourself more investable because they go, hey, these guys can offer me QSBS. Actually, most startups can, but it's something you want to leverage. So the next thing is, I think often, and probably the biggest mistake, is founders raise with YC Combinator, YC post-money cap safes. And the dilution stacks up, if you're not careful, in a way that can really bite you later. So you promise 10% to someone here and 10% there, and then in the next round another 10, and pretty soon you found you've given away a lot of the equity in your company. So YC safes are actually not that safe, and we're looking to bring out a new product to make it, we call it a safer. But that's for another day. I guess those are the main mistakes. And then separately, founders fall out often. And so if you don't have vesting agreements with, in case things go wrong, there's a bit of a bun fight afterwards, and it can mean the company falls apart.
It's the one you said about YC is interesting because that's like the most popular. If you Google it, it's going to be the number one result. Like, this is the YC safe. You can go and download this here. And I'm pretty sure a lot of founders just download that and run with it. And because it's so popular and mainstream, it's all they know about. But it makes sense that it probably has some loopholes that people aren't really thinking about.
Yes, so let me explain very quickly. So let's say you do a priced round or a funding round, and you get Alice and Bob and Charles in the round. They all dilute each other, and so the dilution is shared between the founders and all the investors. But if you do a YC post money cap save with Alice, promising Alice, let's say 5%, and then a little while later you do one with Bob, promising Bob 5%, and then one with Charles later on, you're giving away shared dilution between each of them. Each of those people gets 5% at the time you do your first price round. And so if you're not careful, you've made all these sort of promises and all the dilution adds up against you, the founders. Now, if it's 2% and 3%, it doesn't really matter. But if it's 10% here and 10% there and 10% there, maybe you're raising over several years before you do your first price round, and you're not careful about the valuation caps that you're raising and the total amount you're raising, it can really bite you. And I think where founders run into this problem, they start by going, I'm going to raise 500K on a 10 mil cap or a 5 mil cap. Sounds great. 500K on a 5. Then I'm going to raise another million on a 10 mil cap. Okay, so that's 10% now, and the next one's 10%. Then I'm going to raise 2 mil on a 20 mil cap. Sounds great. That's now 3 times 10% you've given away. And now you do your first, now you do your first round, diluting maybe 20% in that priced round. And now you're actually kind of like 50%, maybe even less than 50% equity. You may have lost control of your company to your investors at your first price round. Maybe, I'm not sure that's an extreme example, but you need to be super careful. So my goal is to educate people so they don't run into that.
It makes sense when you break it down that way, how in a span of 2 or 3 years, you can give up 30-40% of your company in a blink of an eye, you not really realize it. So I like the way you've kind of explained that and broke that down. And so what was another one you mentioned? I think the idea that the lawyers here are so expensive is very true. I personally know a lot of lawyers, and they go out of their way to make it more expensive, which is obviously a problem for startups. But I don't think founders understand why the Delaware C-Corp is so important, and they shouldn't just go get the regular Washington State LLC. Like, what's the difference there? The main difference.
Right, great point. So an LLC, really 3 reasons. Firstly, an LLC is a pass-through tax structure. So this means profits or losses from the business flow through to the members. But an investor doesn't want to inherit the company's profit or tax issues. They want to be quarantined from that. And for that, you need a C-Corp. The second thing is these QSBS tax savings I mentioned. So if an investor can pay no federal capital gains tax up to $10 million or 10x their investment, that made their investment in your startup much more attractive than them buying artwork, a Ferrari, something else. But that only applies if you've got a C corporation. It doesn't work in an LLC. And for that reason, investors want a C Corp. And then comes the question of the Delaware C Corp. So Delaware company law is well known. There are special courts in Delaware that handle disputes. And so Delaware was, the 99.99% use case for VCs and often angels to invest in, because they know the laws. And then Elon began tweeting about it. And then there was a bit of a, oh my God, we don't want Delaware. It's all. But no, if you're the richest man on the planet and you've got a problem with some activist investors, maybe you want to consider something else. But the reality is, for startup founders, worrying about your IPO is not your number one problem. Your number one problem is the friction between you and the next investor you're talking to. And the reality is 95 or 99% of investors and lawyers want a Delaware C Corp. The lawyers don't know anything other than that, so you're just adding tremendous friction. And so when you go talk to an investor and they go, are you a Delaware C Corp? And you go, yep. They go, great, tell me about your business. And if you go, not, I'm a Texas LLC or C Corp, they go, life just became more complicated. You see, I've got all these other people at my door who are Delaware C Corp. I just know that my lawyer knows all about this. I just look at the docs and in 5 minutes I'm in or not. You just added more friction. And your goal is to have less friction, not more. The other thing is the states vie with each other for your business, which is awesome. So when Elon started tweeting about Delaware having some problems with minority shareholder activists, which are not a problem for most people, then they've updated the laws to make it more difficult. Meantime, Texas is trying to copy Delaware to try and win your business. So I love seeing how the states compete. But I mean, realistically, you just look at Hustle Fund. They've got an automated
Yeah.
email that says, you're not a Delaware C-Corp, call us when you got a C-Corp. You want to join Founder Institute, call us when you got a Delaware C-Corp. So you add friction if you're not.
Love that. I appreciate you breaking it down that way to kind of explain the differences, because it's one of those smaller things in the startup area that I don't think. Another thing, because I've had founders come to me and ask me about some of this stuff, and I'm always like, this is something you should research before you start fundraising. Like, a lot of this stuff has to be known before you go out there and ask for millions of dollars. Like, I don't get how you wouldn't do a couple of Google searches, read a few books. I'm literally studying this one here.
Right.
This is like the startup Bible. This is the one you have to have. And like, I just think the education for founders, I think, is really lacking. And I think it could be done a lot better in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and my take is that, there are a lot of things are quite complicated. The legal stuff is quite complicated. But actually, it turns out that, when you've seen thousands of startups, every idea is different, but the formula is exactly the same. I'm raising 500K with safes from these investors for my B2B SaaS, and I'm raising it at a 5 mil or a 10 mil post-money caps. Like, dude, the answer is the same. You want the simplest, least expensive way to get to the same answer, because you're not alone in the world. You don't need to reinvent it. You just need a good set of resources to show you what the typical answer is. And that's really what I like to do at Seed Legals, is recognize what a lot of people are doing, remove the complexity from it so that you get to the right answer for your stage company sooner.
Love that. Love that. So I want to talk about what you do with Starlight Ventures and how you are educating founders and kind of the education that you put out there and what you're teaching. And you mentioned an interesting word that I love, formula. What's the formula that you like to follow for all of these thousands of startups?
So, well, firstly, I talk literally to thousands of founders each year, and I do lots of events. I think I've done like 140 events in 2025, webinars, workshops, and so on. And you see, founders with very similar problems. So I always try to put myself in the position of a founder. I'm a university grad, or, I'm giving up my day job because I've, thought of this new bicycle lock with AI in it. And so you've got somebody who's passionate about something. They don't know about the legals. They don't know how to find investors. And they're looking for someone or something to go and help them. And, lawyers give you a bunch of legal documents, but nobody's gets out of bed in the morning going, you know what I want? I want a whole lot of legal documents. They go, how do I find investors? How do I make a great pitch deck? Why do investors keep telling me, love what you're doing, come back later? If only someone could help me decode that investor feedback. So I like to channel, what the founder is thinking. And obviously they would be at different stages. A Series A founder has got a different set of problems to focus on. And then if I can have, a solution. And the solution is sometimes a product that I might have on the Seed Legals platform, but in many cases it's a video or a webinar. So I like to find experts at things that I'm not expert on and then do a video. So, hey, how does, should I hire someone with an EOR or a PO, or, how do I hire people in different states? Oh, okay, great. It's complicated, but guess what? There are only 3 ways that you typically go about doing it. If you're, this type of company, it will be a PEO. And these 3 companies are great at it. Otherwise, it's an EOR. I probably confused everyone with those terms, but we can dive into that. But broadly, there is often a simple answer because a lot of people do the same thing. And by the way, I like to think of it a bit like sometimes founders think, no, I need a lawyer because I need my legal documents to be like unique to me. This is a really bad red flag. And I like to think about, imagine you go to Miami on holiday and you get out at the airport and you go and pick up your rental car. And the car companies moved all the controls for this model in a different place. It's a disaster. You're sitting in the rental car yard going, where do I put the key in? And like, where's the indicators and where's the brake?
Yes.
You want everything to be in the same place. And that's exactly like an investor looking at your company. If you get to them with this, same, it's Delaware C-Corp, here's a safe, this is a post-money cap, here's my pitch deck, it's of this type of formula, the investor goes, great, I'm already comfortable, I'm driving. Whereas if you've mixed everything around and you go, I'm a Texas LLC and I'm not doing a PowerPoint, I'm sending you a Notion page, and so like, oh my God, no. Now you just went into can I upgrade to another car, please?
Yeah, you don't want to be the founder that's like the outlier because
Yeah.
it's a bad look. I've actually heard some horror stories about things like that where founders are trying too hard to be different. And I think in their mind, it's like if I do things differently, if I present differently, I stand out more, which could possibly get me a bigger investment. But I definitely think that you got to understand that that's probably going to backfire because the investors looking at so many different companies that it has to be formulaic. If not, they're just going to kick you out like, well, you don't have this set up correctly or the way that we like it. Get out. They have too much deal flow to sift through what eventually becomes chaos because if everybody's trying to be different, it becomes chaotic. It's just too many changes for investors to follow.
Exactly. It might just be like a super talent. If you're the ex-CTO of OpenAI, you can do anything you want. But for most people,
Yeah.
you're not. And you're competing with a lot of other startups going to investors. So you want to have a winning pitch, an awesome personality, a great idea, and then the rest should just be like super simple.
Super simple. Okay, so with your webinars and some of the other topics you cover, do you ever get outside of the legal aspect just from your experience? I'm trying to get more of your backstory and I want to hear
Absolutely.
your drama.
All right. Okay. So, the background to Seed Legals, built a startup, sold it, built another startup, sold it, invested in a few, got tired of paying lawyers, built Seed Legals. But actually, a lot of the, mentoring and so on I do has got nothing to do with the legals. It's how to create a great pitch deck, product development, take it till you make it, doing vibe coding, doing user testing. People think they might be coming to my platform for legal documents, but really they need to go build a product either before or after they've raised investment. And so if I can help them not make the product mistakes, that is super important. I'm not selling anything, but I've been there and done that and probably made those mistakes. And so founders, I just see lots of pitch decks where the biggest mistake founders make is if they're talking to you, they tell you excitedly about this problem they're solving. It's amazing. Then you say, send me the pitch deck. And it just goes, we use AI and blockchain to revolutionize insurance or something. It's like, dude, I've already fallen asleep on page one and I have no idea what you do. So founders need to see the skill in creating a pitch deck that's a story. I like to say you're selling the sizzle, not the steak.
I have a question on that, and this is a controversial take. Should founders be paying the pitch deck specialist to build a pitch deck for them? Like, if I'm good at telling the story and I can verbalize it and I can get in front of people and speak, should I then try to translate that skill on paper in the deck, or should I just pay somebody else who can do that?
It's a good point. So, before I answer that question, I know people who do pitch decks and so on for a living, and they tell me that founders often come to them going, hey, I just need a lick of paint on this pitch deck. The deck's great, but the graphics suck. Can you fix the graphics? And then it turns out it's nothing to do. Well, the graphics may suck, but the real problem is there's no business plan, there's no revenue model, and the problem that has to be fixed is a lot deeper. And so instead of thinking it's going to be $500 for some nice graphics, it's $5,000 or more to help you create an actual business plan. So I'm not a huge fan of needing to pay somebody to make your pitch deck look nice. These days, there's some great AI tools. I love Lovable. So Lovable is awesome. I'll, often founders will tell me, will call me and be like, hey, Anthony, can you give me feedback on my pitch deck? And I used to spend, do a 7-minute Loom recording where I'd go through the pitch deck and give feedback. I still do that. But now what I do is I put the pitch deck into Lovable and say, make a better version of this pitch deck. And then I give it some prompting, and usually I'm blown away with what it's come up with. It's just so much better because apart from looking better, it explains the problem that's being solved. And through its AI, it knows the sort of formula for a pitch deck. So I would really encourage someone to use Lovable or other and tell it, make a better version of this pitch deck. Explain how our company, whatever the company name is, solves the problem of whatever. Show 3 worked examples, include customer testimonials, include our business plan. And anyway, you can give it the prompts. And you may be surprised at how much better it is than the one you just worked on for the last 6 months.
That makes sense because with AI, even the designs are looking good now. Like even the visuals for this stuff, it's looking incredible, especially compared to where it was like a year ago, maybe 2 years. It's moving fast. Like every day there's something new. I personally can't keep up with all of it. Like if you miss a day of AI news, you're behind like a week. It's moving so fast. But I do
Right.
agree. Another platform I love is Gamma. Gamma is really good for making pitch decks and presentations. It's helped me make a ton of money already. So I want to put Gamma in this conversation as well.
That's great. And by the way, Lovable is best for websites. For pitch decks, it does great pitch decks, but I couldn't find a way to export it as a PDF. So it's sort of less. It's great for helping you ideate and for a demo, but you have to figure out how to then create it elsewhere. So yeah, but the problem with the vibe coded tools like Lovable is they look great, but now they're all looking the same. And this is a problem when you look at a website and you go, dude, you made this in like 10 minutes with Lovable. How much IP is there really there? And I think investors, when the 83rd Lovable created website or similar they probably are wondering that. So I think you have to work hard, which probably means another 18 seconds of prompting to, tell it to use rich lifestyle graphics and come up with a different theme so it looks unique to you rather than a white page with,
I
4 or 3 round cornered rectangles in a thing. And
Yes.
then some customers like, we've seen this formula before. It's just too formulaic.
It's the same gradient colors, the blue
Exactly.
and purple. I like to add in personal photos from my own events or where I've been speaking or just those kind of things. They just
Right.
add more authenticity because I can't make that. You can't take that moment from the world and AI replicate that. So I like to add that for authenticity. Man, this is really good insight. Let me get your opinion on the vibe coding overall and in general. I think it's the best way to build MVP today to kind of get to that point of building something, getting some customers, getting some kind of traction that kind of will prepare you for some early stage investment.
Well, I think you can vibe code a mock-up in minutes. It's amazing. You never need
Yes.
to pay anyone again. The problem I think is people run into is I built this mock-up. It looks great, but it doesn't work. What do I do next? And now you have to go find and hire somebody to like turn it into something real. So I think there's a huge opportunity for developers who just take your vibe coded thing and make it work. I think there's a whole new area there. So, you can skip a lot of cost of coming up with something that is what you want. But then what happens when the user signs up? Where does this info go and how does it work? And, what's the login security? And there, at some point, as a founder, you've got other things to do with your day. You're not going to spend all
Yeah.
your time vibe coding. It's time to hand over to an expert.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this was a really insightful conversation. I appreciate you coming on and sharing so much of the legal stuff. I think this is like the legal aspect for startups is more of it should be like a series kind of thing because there's so many questions and so much to be covered. It's impossible to get all in one episode. It's like it has to be a series.
I'm delighted when you want to cover more to come back again. We can dive into any number of things.
And how can founders access, connect with you, maybe ask more questions, and check out Seed Legals?
Yeah, great. So Anthony Rose on LinkedIn, Anthony at seedlegals.com by email, or just head over to the seedlegals.com website and hit the web chat. And I'm always happy to answer any questions, and I always try to answer all questions, even if I'm up till 3 a.m.
Man, all right, Anthony, thank you so much for being here, being an amazing guest.
Thank you so much. And those are awesome questions. And thanks for letting me run with a bunch of things that I'm obviously super passionate about.